I was doom scrolling on Twitter looking for ideas to finally blow up this channel until I saw this controversial take. The Saudi League isn't ruining football. The big European leagues are just used to financially dominating other leagues, and their fans can handle it when someone else tries to even it out. And to be honest, I completely agree. When the Saudis took over Newcastle, no one seemed too bothered, but now that they want to rival the Premier League and take their superstars away, everyone's mad and upset, saying that they will ruin football. Those watching who support clubs who aren't among the European reaches will understand the pain of uncovering a young star only to immediately lose it to a bigger team as soon as they start showing some promise. Players, while loyal to their club and stick with them through thick and thin, are becoming rarer and rarer, and in smaller clubs, they're almost impossible to find. Saudi Arabia didn't cause that. I understand they're part of the problem and are just exacerbating the issue even more, but don't put the blame on them. Football isn't the same anymore, and it hasn't been in a long time, but Saudi Arabia aren't the root cause of the problem. The next controversial opinion is ironically from Script Unveiled, saying that football is script. And to my surprise, many people actually think it's true, especially after the 2022 World Cup. Well, I gotta be honest, sometimes things seem too good to be true, and that last World Cup final looked like a bona fide movie. And sure, you could bribe a couple of players and coaches to keep their mouths shut, but don't you think that after all these years someone would come out? Even if only a couple of matches were fixed, you'd have to bribe two entire squads, the two management teams, the referees, and the board of directors of both clubs. If you do it consistently, in 5 years you'd have bribed about 1,000 people. Don't you think that by now someone would have come out and exposed the whole thing, even if they were doing it anonymously? This isn't really a hot take, it's just a tinfoil hat conspiracy. Another hot take that I found and really made me put things into perspective was this one. In his prime, Hazard was a better player than Neymar and Bale. The only players better than him were Messi and Ronaldo. The wording here is a bit confusing, but I'm assuming he's comparing Hazard's prime against other players' primes from his generation and not their entire careers. But still, I gotta disagree. Prime Neymar would be a Ballon d'Or winner if it wasn't for Messi and Ronaldo. On the other hand, Hazard never entered the top 3 discussion in any of his best seasons. A comparison with Bale seems more logical though, and I'm really divided on this one. On one side you got Hazard destroying every opposing Premier League player by himself with his dribbling and technique. On the other, you got a piece of one of the best attacking trios of all time, who shone the brightest in important matches with his explosiveness and finishing prowess. Tough choice, but I'm going with Bale. The next hot take says that Neymar's career should be considered a failure considering the hype he had as a teenager. Although that sounds harsh, I gotta agree. I was already very into football in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and trust me when I tell you, no wonder kid today had nearly as much hype as Neymar, not even Mbappe. People from all around the world were interested in watching Santos matches just because he was there, and for a couple of years there was an El Clasico battle on who would sign Neymar. He truly was one of a kind, and his time at Barca can't be considered a failure by any means. He was the third best player in the world in an era when both Ronaldo and Messi were on their respective primes. But that was just a small portion of his career. He continued to be a great player with PSG, but he never matured enough to lead his teams to Champions League victory or World Cup success. In fact, I would add my own hot take and suggest that Mbappe, despite being over 6 years younger than Neymar, already has a better career. Do you agree? The next one states that AC Milan is bigger than Bayern due to having more legends, more Champions League titles, and one of the best football primes of all time. Interesting take, I would definitely put both teams in the top 5 best of all time. However, I think this argument is a bit biased. Having more legends in your team doesn't make you the best. Look at PSG this past year. Despite having Neymar, Messi, Mbappe and Ramos in their squad, they still perform miserably in the Champions League. In my opinion, AC Milan is better than Bayern in the Champions League, but overall, Bayern is the most successful club. The Rossoneri have had several bad periods in their history where they haven't been able to compete against Europe's elite. Bayern, on the other hand, have been far more consistent. The Bavarians are the best team in their country by far due to their consistently good management and will continue to be in the foreseeable future. I mean, just look at the way they handle failure. They could win the league, but if they don't do it in a convincing fashion, it's still a failure. So, I gotta disagree. Next one reads, Gavi is not as talented as Pedri, Camavinga and Bellingham. He's just in debate because of his cute looks. His cute looks. I knew that women like players because of their looks, but I didn't know it was a common thing among all football fans. I honestly thought he got put in that conversation because of all the Xavi and Iniesta comparisons with him and Pedri. Either way, bang average player that will probably play with Osasuna in the next couple of years. Prove me wrong. Adi says that the current Man City squad, all in their prime, wouldn't make it to the top 5 if not for Pep and a background staff. He will be the missing factor. Pep certainly gave the credibility of world beaters to City. Many players joined the club simply to work with him. I don't think that they would be in the level that they are without Guardiola, and the historic treble would have probably never happened. But to say that the current squad wouldn't be in the top 5 is blowing things way out of proportion. If Pep leaves today, the structure will remain and another coach that he influenced would take over. Would City match their current levels? Probably not, but they wouldn't miss on Champions League qualification. The gap between City and the other teams is still pretty large, and you'd have to be an imbecile to finish 6th with City. In contrast to the last opinion, we got Gary, that says Guardiola isn't proven. He's only ever managed teams that were favorites to win in the first place. In a way, I think he's exaggerating, since Barcelona, before he took over, weren't necessarily the best team in Europe. They had won the Champions League 2 years before, but they had since lost Ronaldinho and Deco, 2 of their biggest stars. Besides, Man City were millionaires, but they were far from being the best team in the world when Pep took the manager role. So I wouldn't say he's unproven, but I would definitely like to see him coach a team like Roma and see what he can achieve compared to Mourinho. CVC Trey says Alex Ferguson wasn't a good manager, but rather he managed against bad teams, thus it made them look good. The only reason he was dominating was because other teams never had the finances, thus that's part of the reason Man U are bad today. It's because they still have the same mindset. How old is this guy? Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool all had terrific teams in the 2000s, and Man United still came out on top the majority of times. Plus, let me give you some trivia. Up until his departure in 2013, Man United had spent 22 consecutive seasons on the podium. That's not because of money, that's because of the values that he imposed in the club and the excellence and winning mentality that he demanded from his players. There were no stars, no one would come before the club. And that's exactly what Man United lacks today and why they aren't serial winners anymore. And the final controversial opinion in this video is one that I've heard a lot. Not a single player from the 60s and 70s would play in the modern day Premier League. So, you're telling me that Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Pelé and Eusebio wouldn't be able to lace up their boots with Luton Town, right? Look, I get it, they all smoked, take crap, and many were heavy drinkers. Nowadays it is expected a much higher level of fitness to play, and most of them wouldn't have reached the same heights because their coaches wouldn't reward their bad behaviors. On the other hand, their lifestyle was the norm back then. You had cigarette ads on TV, men were encouraged to drink because it was a cool thing to do. If the best players from that era were put in our current age, they would most likely stay out of trouble. The simple acts of partying and not following a strict diet are criticized, with players like Neymar and Hazard becoming less and less the norm. The culture has changed, and in a majority of cases, we're simply a reflection of our society. And that is it for the video. I hope you like this different style of content. Don't forget to leave your own controversial takes in the comments, and you might appear on the next video. Leave a like so I know you want to watch more content like this, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss another interesting football video. Thanks for watching until the end, I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.